Interior, podcast studio, day, a singer, songwriter, a filmmaker, director. Enter the frame. Welcome back to The Frame. I am your host, Gregory Romein.
And I'm your host, Felix King.
And today we are going to be talking about the process. Have we already done an episode about the process?
I feel like we've talked about the process.
But now we're going to really talk about
I don't know that we've talked about our processes. We've talked about the process, but not our individual small t, the process.
This really came from the question that we're often asked by people, which is, where do your... Every day. People just see us walking down the street and they go, artists. But where does it come from? And that is why we're here today, to tell you where it comes from.
I get it from under my bed.
I bet you have a messy under the bed.
Oh my God, it hasn't
scene.
been vacuumed in.
Do you have plates under the bed?
Mostly socks and dust bunnies and pens. I'm sure there's like a million pens under my bed. And there's a sketchbook under my bed, so that's kind of fitting.
So when your ideas don't come from under the bed, where do these genius moments, these sparks of creative inspiration that fuel Ben's songwriting?
A lot of my ideas on my last EP came from photographs of myself from when I was like a kid, or I was like looking through my phone to like come up with ideas. I used a lot of things to come up with ideas, but the songs I ended up liking the best in recording were the ones that came from photographs. I like a photograph because it gives like an age, it gives like a time period of my life. It gives me like a clear visual. It gives me a location. It gives me a person that I'm singing to. And even if I alter it, like that image, I tried to have like a photograph for each one of I think almost every song that I wrote, I had like a photograph that I pulled inspiration from and was like my visual idea that the lyrics and melody. I don't know. I feel like you have to pull from everywhere. Like I can get inspired by looking through a magazine or looking at a piece of art or hearing what somebody else is doing. Nature can be inspiring. I mean, I feel like the goal is to be inspired by as many things as possible and catalog them. I think that's the main process, is like have a collection of inspiration. I have many photo albums on my phone that say art inspo, singing inspo, this inspo. Like there's just an endless amount of inspo folders and voice memos and notes that I log all of my ideas down. So anytime I think, oh, that should be a song, I try to write it down so that when I'm actually songwriting, I'm like, what am I going to write about? And I don't have to even think about it. I can just go to an idea I already had.
Yeah, there's a period of time where I would have like Post-it cards like everywhere. I mean, in my car, every jacket pocket, in my backpack, all over my apartment, and just scribble down what, creative idea came to me at the moment. And then you just have that kind of as like a thing to go back to as like a resource. So I think that's helpful.
I try to be one of those cool kids with like a leather-bound journal that I write down all my ideas in, but that ends up not happening because I won't carry the journal with me, or if I do, I end up not using it and I just like write the idea in my phone. And then when I actually write the song, I usually write that in the leather-bound journal, but the inspo ideas are usually stored somewhere weird in my phone.
How often do you find yourself getting an idea and immediately going to like writing it out in song form?
I don't know that happens very often. I will say that happens while I'm songwriting. So sometimes when you're songwriting, you're writing a certain song and then an idea will pop into my head and I'll just like pivot to that new song and then write it right away. But if I'm like driving somewhere in the shower and an idea pops into my head, I don't like immediately go and write it down.
Do you use voice memos? Because sometimes I'll do that. If I'm driving, I have like an idea pop in my mind, I'll safely reach for my phone and get the voice memo and just start talking out loud.
Yeah, I I will do that if it's like a melody, or like if like a verse or a chorus comes to me and I need to like remember what the melody was, then I'll do that. If it's just a lyric or an idea for the song, then I will type it.
Is there a song that you have not finished that has been kind of like collecting dust for a long time?
Oh, there's hundreds. Like the moment I'm writing and like a song isn't working, I tend to get bored and I move on to like what's exciting me. I tend to like finish a song with someone. Like I feel like I can get a song to like the 90% mark pretty well, and then I need either a producer or another songwriter to like help me care enough to like finish the song. But like once I have a good 40 to 50% of the idea of the song, I feel good and I'm like, I've got the idea of the song and what I would want it to be, and then I'm happy to just leave that and be like, whoever I bring in next can help me finish it, if I'm even going to finish it. Because most of the time the songs that I write don't get finished. If a producer or another songwriter doesn't think it's a good enough idea, or like that 50% of the song they're not excited about it, then I don't bother finishing it. Because finishing it takes about like 10 times longer. Like writing the first half just like will pop out, and like making sure the structure is right and making sure that the amount of syllables are right and making sure that the melodies are right, and all of that stuff is so tedious and takes 10 times more time. So, and is not the part that people remember. People remember the main idea of the song. So I try to just come up with as many songs as possible that are at least 50% done.
Do you remember the first song you wrote?
Like that I wrote that was good, or that I ever wrote?
I guess that you really felt was good, where you're like, I'm really proud of this. Because I know, I mean, you probably started writing songs way back in the day, but the one where you felt kind of like this was a pivot for you artistically.
I could look in my songwriting journal because it'll be whatever the first song is in there. Well, I did write I did write some weird songs about drugs that will never see the light of day. They were all jokes that like my friends and I were writing, and like ketamine was a big thing, and so we wrote a song called Horse Tranquilizer. That one was very inappropriate and just for fun. That was probably one of like the first songs that like I like fully finished, and I wrote it with like two other friends, and it was all a joke. But the first song that I ever wrote that was really good, or that like finished yeah, I don't know, I'd have to look. I was kind of on this last EP, that's when I would consider like the songs that I was writing like getting to like a finished quality, and it was kind of all happening at the same time. Like I wrote 40 songs in 40 days, so they all kind of seem like they were written at the same time. There's a song that hasn't come out yet called Control Alt Delete. That was one of the first songs that I felt like showing other people. But there was a song before it which I didn't finish, but that would have been actually the first one.
Have you put out an album before this one?
Nope. This will be my first.
What about singles?
Nope. I was always a behind the scenes kind of guy. I mean, in like the classical world, I'm like on a few like recordings and choruses and productions and things like that, but nothing that was like, this is me. Yeah. Tell me about your process.
Me? I thought you'd never ask.
How does it start? How do you get your idea?
The idea for me, I do not work well in terms of like being really structured. And I've read all the different screenwriting books, and really having a routine is very helpful once I've already started an idea. But to like go from no idea, I'm just going to sit down for 10 minutes every morning, write ideas, that's just not my personality. So it really is more about like, it could be, I remember one time I was driving in Boston, and there's this car in front of me, kind of like an old school Cadillac jalopy with these like three old people in it that looked almost something out of like, I don't know, kind of like a 60s like gangster movie. And, you know, the old guys smoking, the woman next to him smoking, looked almost maybe like she had a fake wig on. Like everything, almost like their features were so like jarring, it almost felt like they were wearing prosthetic like faces. and they were just like weaving in and out of the lanes, like as blatant and obvious, where it's like almost like it has to be like a prank or something. And then you start to profile these people, and you're like, this behavior does not match this like demographic of a person right now. Like I should see high school students in here. And then there's a guy in the background that kept on looking back at me and kind of like smiling. Like it was so out there that then my mind started going. And I started creating this idea of like, they're like, three friends that kind of broke out of like some kind of retirement home, and they're doing this. I kind of thought of it as like a road trip style genre film, and they're gonna go do this road trip where one of them has like some kind of unresolved past deeds they need to like take care of. Kind of wanted it to get a little muddied in terms of like maybe some crime elements, and I followed them. And they continued doing this. Like I was waiting for a cop to finally see them, but so in one instance, ideas can come from just that visual stimulus that's happening when I'm driving. Then the other is like it'll come from, I guess I've been like lucky recently where I've had an idea that like came to me, as cliche as it sounds, like in a dream, where like I would not bet money on that. Like that's not gonna happen a lot. Like don't try to make a career that way. And I'm having this dream. I think I've told you about this before, but this is what my upcoming film is about. And in the dream, I'm got kind of like a omnipresent view of the scene below me, which is the summer evening on this island that's outside of where my family lives in Seattle, and it's like a summer place and a long big table, lots of family friends, a very jovial evening. People are just kind of like grouped together talking, and then I'm processing all of this, but in the kind of like body of like an 8-year-old, or like it just felt like a young kid inside of me in the dream, just saying bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. And I literally woke up saying the word bullshit. I'm in a hotel in Spain, and I'm just like, what just happened there? Like it was such a vivid dream. The words were coming out of my mouth when I woke up, and then just kind of like a flood of like all these dots that I had been processing through therapy and my own personal experiences. It just seemed like they connected, not in like something clear, but some abstract kind of like if you were to just start drawing lines between stars, and you're like, that looks kind of like something, but it's not fully there yet. And that dream ended up being something that I turned into, which is this current film that's coming out about the way we process grief in terms of it manifesting in anger and rage. And in that dream, it was this young boy seeing the scene that his mom, who's no longer alive, is unable to participate. Just your lovely summer evening with friends, having a great time that everyone gets to carry on and do. And then that's now been what I've used as inspiration for this upcoming film titled Bunny Ears.
That's a new title.
It is a new title. Breaking news.
No, I think we talked about bunny ears, and you were resistant to the word bunny.
I was. I've been going back and forth, but that's another conversation. It's fitting though. So that's something I think is like a one and done thing. I'm not betting that's ever going to happen again. And so when my, inspiration does come outside of that, it's like I do really just obviously pull from my lived experience, which is what we all do, and then just kind of figure out like what genre do I want to put this in? Because sometimes it's like doing like a literal one-to-one isn't that compelling, and you do need to kind of like distort it just because it's like personal to you. To have it be so literal, sometimes like it's a very flat narrative, and so it's like, okay, how can I take this unique experience but put it in a sci-fi thriller, and then you're kind of off to the races.
What are the you said you don't like to write with any sort of structure, but I'm sure there is like a structure to writing a script. So like one of the things that I do when I'm writing a song is that I kind of have 5 categories. I need to come up with the title, I need to come up with the chords, I need to come up with the story. I need to come up with the lyrics. I need to come up with like a list of keywords. And so I don't have to do any one of those in any particular order, but I usually need those 5 things, to make and complete a song. So like I'll bounce around between those 5 categories while I'm writing so that I don't feel stuck. What are the things that you need to come up with when you're writing a script, and then when do you come up with those ideas? Is it different like in like writing?
No, it's a good kind of, I would say there's a parallel to it. When I was speaking about structure, it was more about like the routine of like getting yourself to writing, where screenwriting structure, sometimes like, it's like a lot of people often will like write the ending, and that like helps them kind of process, and then start in the beginning. The middle is usually the like hardest part for anyone to kind of like get through. For me, like when I'm writing, I usually draw on like who is my protagonist and create their profile of like what are their personality like tendencies, and who then is like a opposing type of character to that, because what you look for is like conflict doesn't mean like something physical. It just means like maybe, you know, character A is very agreeable, character B is very disagreeable. Now the two of them are in a car and they have to make a decision about do they go left or do they go right type of situation. And then now you have something unique there. If the two characters are both, the same, no one's going to buy into that.
Do you try to like come up with like the like character list, and then like what would be like a classical like first step in like writing a script? Like do you come up with like the list of characters and like the main story, and then you start writing dialogue, or will you start writing dialogue even if you only have one character?
Yeah, I'll just jump right in for the most part. Like it's the idea's there, and I'm gonna try to kind of see how far I can jump and where I land. Then we'll determine, okay, I've got 3 characters so far. I know this is gonna be, a short film. How many more characters do I really need? What are the characters that I think are missing for like what's the story I'm trying to tell? Could I tell it with just 3 characters? So you start playing like that kind of game in terms of like numbers for like not every story needs sometimes more than just one character. And then I think for me, I think of it a lot as like what are my like legit production constraints? From your budget, from your resources, that then kind of dictates locations, that dictates what types of scenes should I be thinking about, because sometimes you can write a scene and you're like, oh, that was really cool, but I have no way of pulling that off. So there's that kind of like self like reality check, which I don't know how that would like translate to songwriting.
No, that happens all the time. Sometimes you'll be writing a song and like a lyric or a melody will come to you and you think it's part of the song, and then you realize, oh, this is too strong of an idea to be in the song and needs its own song or needs to be in a different song. And that happens a lot. And like a lot changes once you take it to a producer. Sometimes what you thought was like the first verse ends up being the chorus, and the chorus ends up being like, I'm sure that happens in production. Like the script you wrote and the thing that you thought in your head that the movie was going to be, something else happened, and an actor made a choice that was even better than what you could have written. And so then the movie like evolves into something more than your initial starting script.
Yeah, that's something at least I wasn't that aware of starting off. Was like, this isn't some holy grail set in stone. It's not, this verbatim script, where in post, so many films that we all watch, they're being tweaked, lines, new lines being added, lines taken away. Maybe it's done through voiceover, maybe it's done through ADR, where they're literally just redubbing the lines. That's a very common thing. That's like, you have to get your mindset to that point, because then it also makes you kind of relax a little bit on set. You're like, okay, sure, let's go with that improvised line, and then we can, not be so religious to what's on the script. At least I found that working with my personality.
I think that's why I try not to like fully finish a song too, because I want to leave the flexibility for something to happen in the recording studio with the producer, and like sometimes they have ideas of sounds and lyrics and melodies that are even better than what I would have come up with. So by not fully finishing the song, like you're not giving the producer as many things to follow, and they can kind of take your inspiration and push it farther. Um,
I really love watching these kind of like documentaries of seeing songwriters and producers in the studio in that collaboration environment. I mean, you can get that in like a writer's room, but there's something just like so. It feels at least from like an observer so much more dynamic. One, you know, you're sometimes the producer is like, okay, talks about some kind of concept, and then they can actually in the moment do whatever they do engineer wise and play it, and it's like, oh yeah, that's what I'm hearing in my head, or actually no, this is kind of more of how it sounds, and you start tweaking it that way. There's less of that in when you're limited to just words on paper.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're not limited to words on paper because like a lot of the writing happens while you're shooting. So like, I guess if you're a writer and not also a director, then it wouldn't happen. But if you're like a writer and the director, then you kind of get that same kind of freedom to like, you're going for a specific mood and a specific emotion and a specific thing, but how you achieve that might be different depend on what kind of people you cast and what their reflexes are. I really like being in like a freestyle session with the producer where it's like you both just show up and like one of you throws something out and one of you throws something out, and you just like try to like find something cool between the two of you, and then once you have that thing, then building the song from that. And that's, that doesn't take very much like premeditated songwriting. That's kind of just like trying to discover what happens in the moment. And a lot of artists will just go to the studio and just throw darts at a wall and see if anything sticks. And those recordings are usually brutal, and no one should ever be allowed to listen to them because like I think that's the thing that most people are scared of, is like sounding bad or saying something dumb. It's like, no, you need to expect to sound bad. You need to expect to say dumb things in the process of finding it. Like 90% of the things most professional artists write or sing is going to sound bad. And it's the true artist that can find the things within that are cool and turn it into something really cool. I don't know anyone that can just, well, there are the weird people that can just, make up crap and it sounds cool, but most of us have to like hunt for it.
Yeah, I've heard people describe like SNL like writing sessions where the creator Lauren Michaels like really instilled like whatever first comes to your mind, say it. Yeah, it's going to be scary. You're going to probably get laughed at and it will not see the light of day, but you have to just do that. You have to, otherwise you're going to miss out on 10 things, and like your personal like going back to self-sabotaging narratives like, oh, I've got this idea. Oh, that part of my monkey brain's telling me don't say it. That person's going to laugh at me. They always are super critical. This person's going to think it's dumb. Oh, I'll put that away. But you got to go through that, and that's like part of the creative process also. Even with writing, like if you're doing it by yourself, sometimes I have an idea come to me. I'm like, oh, but I can't really write that experience. I can't really write that genre.
I think like the act of improv, like you were saying in SNL, is a really good tool that like anyone that's trying to be creative should go through to figure out how to overcome like fear and like negative thoughts and writer's block. Like improv just forces you to come up with anything. It doesn't have to be good. Just like spit stuff out and accept it. And like you have to say yes, and there's no. And so when you're in that frame of like improv, it gets you comfortable with being dumb and like saying dumb things and singing dumb things or writing dumb things. And you don't have so much fear to make mistakes. Like usually the successful thing is surrounded by mistakes. So being comfortable making a lot of mistakes is a very important asset for an artist. When I'm teaching a lot, like everyone they take so long to write their first song, and they put all of their like hopes and prayers into this first song. And I'm like, no, write a song, and I want you to rip it up and throw it away. Like, you have 5 minutes, write a song from beginning to end, and I don't even want to look at it. Like, write 10 and rip them and throw them away. No one needs to see them. You need to practice just throwing stuff down and not caring if it's good. And then once you start making good stuff, then refine it and throw more crap at it.